Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. This is my second video. I'm excited to, start producing more content as I get more familiar with the platform and more used to, filming. I'm in a good mood myself. It's Friday. I got some Chinese food. I'm going to open up this thing here in a little bit. Just some Shabo whiskey. I was at the shop on the way home and it wasn't very expensive and I thought, why not? It's Friday. Treat myself a little bit. But what I wanted to talk about today was waifus. Waifus and those dakimakura pillows that are popular along with them. Like I said before, I am a self-confessed weeaboo in my first video. I don't have a dakimakura pillow yet. But I was going to talk about how I think that they're actually spiritually valid things. They're historically, I think they kind of replace the Mother Goddess archetype or even the Virgin Mary archetype when you think about where the cult of the Virgin Mary originally came from. Now, this isn't a scholarly channel. Like I've said in my first video, it's just real-time shitposting. I'm just rambling about things that have caught my interest or things that I remember reading years ago that I'll try and find sources on later to hook you up with. At the moment, I'm working abroad, so I don't have access to my home library. But when I do, I'll go through. If I source a book, I'll try to go through my library when I get home and either put it in the comments or cross-reference it in another video that I make later. But what I wanted to talk about was, like I said, the origin of the cult of the Virgin Mary and how it ties in to waifu pillows, or the waifus in general, and dakimakura pillows. So you all know that concept of courtly love that developed in the Arthurian legends in the Middle Ages. It started out in the Arthurian legends. The troubadours would go around telling, singing, and the idea was that a knight, the purest love that a knight could have. The purest love a knight could have would be completely free of anything sexual. He would be completely devoted to a woman. Now, it would be for a woman. He could still have homosocial relations and of course, that bond with other men in the round table and things like that. But the purest sort of love for a woman would be non-sexual, the same way that pure love for another man in the round table was non-sexual. And he would find some beautiful, noble-born lady and devote himself to her and devote all of his victories in the tournaments and in battle against the enemies of God to her image. And she would tie her the ribbon from her hair around his lance or his arm before he went into the tournament, etc. But the catch was he could not have sex with her. Because as soon as you had sex with her, you broke that purity and it became a physical thing. And you had to be devoted to her for her own sake, not for her body. That would break the pure, worshipful devotion of courtly love. And many nights then, as the Arthurian legends gained in popularity, interestingly, there's more written about Arthur and his knights in French than English. I mean, those of you who study history probably know that. But if you're not familiar with too much medieval cultural history, that might be kind of cool for you. Of course, the lingua franca, the language of the Franks that was spoken among the intellectuals and nobles of Europe in the Middle Ages and into the Enlightenment and well, really into the 20th century too. That's not the point. But the point is that, so these knights then would start to attempt to practice the ideals of courtly love and find a woman to be devoted to and worship. And often they would choose a married woman because they thought, oh, well, if she's married, that will reduce the chances that I'm going to have sex with her. Because even if I'm tempted, it will make it harder for me to give in to that temptation because, you know, she's married, and that's causes a lot more problems sleeping with a married woman than with a single woman. So these knights were choosing, you know, married noble ladies to devote themselves to and fall in love with. The problem was, of course, we're human beings, and they would end up having sex with each other eventually. And the priests, the clergy and stuff were noticing this, and they were like, okay, this is causing well, not just the priests, everyone was noticing this, like, oh, this is an issue, these knights are having sex with these married women, what can we do? Well, then they created the cult of the Virgin Mary. Now, where I'm getting this from, I'll source the book when I return home again in the next few months. But there was like an encyclopedia of, I think it was called like the Chivalric Encyclopedia or something. I have it on my shelf. I read it at university. It was for one of my classes, and I ended up keeping it after the class because it was so interesting. It was a collection of topics, essays, I guess, on various topics associated with the chivalric culture, drawing on things that had been written by intellectuals, by priests, by troubadours, by the knights themselves, etc. So it's either that, or I might be taking it from Revolt Against the Modern World. I haven't read Revolt Against the Modern World since high school. I really haven't read Evola in general since high school. I need to get back on him again, but it's either from Revolt Against the Modern World or it's from this chivalric encyclopedia, which I promise to tell you more about once I'm back home again. But they said, well, if these knights keep having sex with the women that they've devoted themselves to in the practice of courtly love, who's a woman that they can't have sex with, no matter how badly they want to? Well, what about the Virgin Mary? We pray to saints, yeah? So what if we developed a cult, like a cult that we have around any of the other saints around the Virgin Mary? Of course, the Virgin Mary was already kind of part of the spirituality, but it didn't become such a huge thing, worshiping Mary, until I think it was around the time of the Crusades. And they said, why don't you devote all your love and worship to the Virgin Mary? You owe, more to her than to any other woman because she, gave birth to your Savior. And also, she's untouchable. She's up in heaven. You don't even know really what she looks like. So you can devote yourself to this gentle, pure, feminine, ideal woman without having to risk contaminating that love with sex. And I think that's the same thing with the waifus, your waifu. You can devote yourself to some anime character. I guess you could devote yourself to a celebrity. I guess if I had to pick someone, it would be Elle Fanning. But, you can devote yourself to a intangible, faraway woman who you have no chance with seeing, or which is one good thing, but there's still temptation in that because she's real, and you might hold out the idea that, well, maybe someday, I will meet her or something like that. Or you can devote yourself to an anime character who, like the Virgin Mary, is intangible. She's some sort of, untouchable in another realm, another universe. And there's no way I can pollute my love for her with sex. Now, I'm not saying that I think that's what these people who have a waifu and a dokimakura pillow are thinking necessarily. I mean, maybe some are really devoting themselves to it in that sense. But I think that there's just there's kind of a holdover in that when you see how devoted some people are, unironically, to their waifu. And often it's not even in a sexual sense. They just find, oh, this anime character is so cute and cuddly, and you know, she's so gentle and feminine, and you know, oh, pure. Oh, this waifu is so pure, the best waifu. I believe that's really a holdover from sort of this Virgin Mary cult, and the Virgin Mary cult is a holdover from you know, the pure feminine cult of a female goddess. Well, of course, female goddess, a goddess. So I actually think that having a waifu in a particular way is a completely valid form of spirituality. You know, and I mean, who knows? Maybe they're real in another realm. You've heard of the whole meme magic thing. You know, remember when 4chan was a death cult for a little while with Ebola-chan? And, you know, there were all kinds of weird meme coincidences. People were getting into numerology and things like that, and things that supposedly confirmed she was real. The Trump presidency, when everyone was talking about Keck and Chatelet during the election, and, you know, there were some creepy coincidences there that maybe implied there was some, I don't know, I'm not saying that that's something I'm really into, but who knows, maybe there is another dimension where your waifu is real. Another story I'll set a link to later, maybe in my next video, if I can find it. I remember reading some article. This wasn't an urban legend. This was on some paranormal blog that was talking about paranormal study done in the 50s or 60s, I think, with like named researchers, named like members of the Society for Cyclical Research, I believe. This was a long time since I've read it. But they sort of created a ghost. This group got together and had a seance circle and used an Ouija board, and over the course of time built up a backstory for this entity. It was like some Elizabethan figure, some knight from the 1500s, and he had been in love with like a gypsy woman who was like accused of being a witch and killed, and it wasn't real. None of this was real. They made it all up. But suddenly the entity was communicating things through the Ouija board that like nobody else could know. And even though they created this entity, an egregore, it was sort of an egregore. If you read about that, an egregore is an entity that is created by enough people kind of believing in it, and it exists in the ethereal plane and suddenly develops a mind of its own because enough people manifested their spiritual consciousness, whatever they want to call it, into creating this thing. And I mean, like I said, I'm not like an occultist or anything. These are just things that I find interesting and kind of fun to read about and think about. Perhaps your waifu is out there in another dimension, you know, and she'll be reunited with you someday. Maybe, you know, I suppose that's my approach to religion and spirituality. People are like, well, is you know, Jesus or Odin or you know, whoever compatible with this ideology or that ideology. I guess if you're like a chaos magician or something, anything can be, you know, compatible with that ideology, because if enough of you believe in this type of Jesus or this type of Woden or these Valkyries and focus on it enough, your little cult has created its deity. You know, you can create the god of your movement thing. Like I said, I'm not necessarily saying that's, you know, something I'm advocating or anything like that, but all I'm doing, like I said, is a real-time shitpost. And it's just something that I think is maybe an interesting concept that to recap, your waifu is the equivalent of the way medieval knights viewed the Virgin Mary. Your waifu and, you know, Crusader Jesus and Odin and the Valkyries, they might all be real thanks to so many people believing in them and existing in some ethereal plane somewhere. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's fun to entertain the concept anyway. So now I think I've rambled enough. I've got a belly full of Chinese food. My cat that I'm taking care of for the weekend wants to play, so I think I'll leave my rant at that. I hope you found it interesting. Like I said, once I'm home again and have the opportunity to go through my library and stuff, I'll let you know. I'll find those books that I've referenced earlier and either add them in the description, or I will mention them in the next video. So, all right. Thank you for listening. Please give me a like if you enjoyed it. Maybe subscribe for more spurgy tirades. And God save the Queen.